set to get started. I think we're okay up here. Alright. Good afternoon. Welcome to the April 14th, 2025 meeting of the Riverfront Advisory Committee. Would like to open the floor first and foremost for public comment, if anyone has any they'd like to make. Sure, Mr. Collins. Can you just approach the mic.
With any kind of luck, I'll be starting to put the weir in towards the end of next week. Should be pretty much in by May 1st.
Okay. Thank you for the update.
You're gonna have the nets in this year, is that true?
What's that?
Are you putting up the nets this year, is
Yes.
that true?
Yes, the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries says, I have in writing that New Hampshire Fish and Game Department made a mistake by closing the season in the first place, like I was telling them 4 years ago, and they've reopened it up.
Okay, that's good.
Nice.
Good to know.
Yeah, good to understand. Review and approval of the minutes. So we have two items, actual meeting minutes from February 10th, and then kind of like we just sort of talked about, call it notes from March 3rd's meeting, which was not a formal meeting as we did not have a quorum. Any comments or questions on the notes from February 10th?
They were included with the packet that Bart just passed out, so.
Nice. Scan here. Oh, I did read these actually.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Need a motion to approve?
Yeah, hold on. I did have an actual. Wow, I completely forgot about that. I did have two small corrections, which I don't know if came up last time. On bottom of page 2, Joe, under where it says resiliency, says like under goals number 2, Lamprey River should be clarified, does not include the whole river. I feel like we had back and forth conversation about that and decided to kind of leave the language alone as it had originally been drafted in the chapter. So I might kind of move to just strike that second sentence.
Lamprey River should be clarified?
Yeah, because I brought up the thing of like, is it really, are we talking about controlling water quality like specifically as it outlets into Lamprey River? But I felt like the discussion and the committee as a whole said, as we're talking about goals and resiliency, that it should be a goal to care about water quality all the way through the Lamprey, not just at that specific location. So I think we kind of left that alone.
So I'm crossing out, under goals number 2, Lamprey River should be clarified.
Maybe just the whole second sentence. Just leave it at there was a discussion about contamination standards, living shoreline. I think that's accurate. I think the second sentence is sort of misleading.
Okay.
I think that. All right, that was it. So
Motion to approve?
yeah, approve as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Who seconded it? I'm sorry.
I did.
Okay.
Thank you. Bart, can you enlighten us about what we do? Or do we have to make any motion on the notes from the 3rd, since it's not a meeting? Okay. All right, good. We will put that to the file and table it then. So on to primary goal of today's continue talk about the master plan chapter, and specifically for today, the goals and recommendations table which I believe is going into the implementation chapter and is kind of the committee's chance to speak to Liz about the content that ultimately makes it into here. So I hope everyone's kind of had some opportunity to maybe look through this a little bit, put some of their thoughts together, and then we can collectively talk with Liz about what we want implemented here. Yeah, I don't know, Liz. I think we're we're ready for you, Bardu. I know we did talk about this a little bit Wednesday night. It seems like we might be one of our earlier chapters that's actually made it to this step. So I know we talked about some of those things about having like standardized drop downs for ultimately what goes in some of these columns, things like that. So yeah, if you'd want to take it away, go for it.
Yeah, so last Wednesday, the master plan subcommittee met, and prior to that meeting, SRPC and Liz Durfee, they basically took a stab at drop downs. What the time frame, what does that mean? So kind of creating the variables, and then out of that meeting, there was a discussion on priority. And what does priority mean? How do you get the priority? How does one make a decision on what is to prioritize? And I kind of want to have that discussion here because you are the first chapter, really, to kind of you're more advanced. Because we were kind of struggling with this, with the Arts and Culture Committee as well. What is a priority? How do we come to that conclusion? And do we need it at all? So I just want to kind of broach the subject here. I was discussing this earlier prior to this meeting with Lindsay. All these technically are priorities are in this list. It's just more of time and resources and opportunity. So, do we need that priorities column, or, can we use something else? I kind of want to see how everyone feels here.
I think it would be nice to prioritize,
Okay.
At least a rough priority.
Okay.
And if I could, like the vibrancy, if I could take a stab at, these are my thoughts, okay?
Okay.
So we got like three main goals, primary goals. Two of them, celebrate social and economic and natural history, incorporate arts and culture, and then maintain and enhance the amenities of downtown. To me, the maintenance is a higher priority. The other two are kind of like nice to have type of things.
Okay.
But definitely, I think we need to do something about resolving who's responsible for maintenance of down on the Riverwalk there and down there. And, how do we go about getting somebody to do stuff when we need, bricks fixed or something to that effect?
Okay. So let me pause right there. How does everyone else feel about
I
priority?
just want to expand upon what Joe commented. I agree. I think the maintenance and the responsibility is important. And I also think that once everything kind of comes together physically down there, I think the arts and culture will then come. Because I think it'll make it a more attractive place and easier access for some of those programs that we have during the warmer months.
Okay. So do we collectively agree that there should be a priority column?
Yeah, so the comment that I think I had made Wednesday night is I don't I think all of these are priorities to some degree. That's why they're on this sheet. So I think the goal is not to like try to stack rank every single thing on the sheet, but I think having a column with priority and just with the sheer number of lines on here, maybe call it 10 of them. Like what are the 10 action items that we see as priorities of all the priorities? What are the most important ones? And I think Lindsay had a really good comment that I'll kind of steal and paraphrase here too about like we shouldn't be dissuaded from something that's like more of a 10-year item that might require a capital outlay. Like that can still be a priority over something that we can do in 25 minutes on a Tuesday afternoon. So.
Yeah, especially for the master plan.
Yes.
To me, the idea here is some things can't be done. There's an idea of priority, but there's also an idea of sequence.
Yeah.
I can't get my head around how you plan signage directly in Shanda Park, how you plan, what the landscape's going to look like, until you start to be able to envision that platform. Is it going to, is that something that we are going to plan around? Are we behind that, or do we need to, we got to sort of decide which of these are going to move to an more advanced plan before you try to fill in a lot of if we start putting up signs when we don't even know what the park's going to look like, then it gets kind of tough, I think. Even though we all agree signs are important, and historic markers are a big part of what we want to achieve.
Yeah, I think with any type of wayfinding signage, you create the infrastructure for additional signage to occur. So yeah, that's through design. I think we can accommodate, but it could be something that it seems like a lot of communities are prioritizing wayfinding. So or as a common theme, I think throughout this whole process. But yeah, and I also agree with your points too, Dale, that we need to understand the overarching goals. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Just a question. Liz Durfee, planning consultant. I was talking about this a little bit earlier with someone at SRPC, and one of the things that we were talking about was, are you going to prioritize kind of independent from the cost, the time frame columns, just the projects that you really want to do the most or that need to be done the most? Because you have the time frame category, and I think that's sort of what Lindsay was alluding to at the other meeting. You have your time frame, you have your cost categories, and those may factor into how implementation actually plays out. But I think the town and master plan committee and planning board are probably very interested in what your top projects are, regardless of the cost or kind of like the sequencing piece. So that may be one way to think about it, is just what are the top things that you want to do without thinking about the other columns, because that information is going to be accounted for at some point.
I would agree. I'd personally have it independent of those. Yeah.
Because to me, the thing that I feel like I think I understand it a little better. If we go back a couple of years, we were talking about what are we going to do about Moonlight Brook and stuff like that. I feel like all of that stuff is in place. So in some ways, I feel that there's a pretty good confidence that Moonlight Brook is going to test better. If they did bacterial testing, it's going to test better. And I'm hopeful that we're going to have some kind of expanded, instead of a culvert, it will be more like a platform, maybe bridge, whatever we want to use that terminology. And to me, if I envision it that way, then it impacts a lot of other things. So that's a big project. But I think if we have a sense that that's an important part of it, the decision around that becomes early in the sequence. And then you design the rest of it as if you think that's going to happen, and you try to figure out how you go for grants and how you continue with the parts of this project we've already been talking about for several years. And then, we already have drawings of what it looks like that way, but I think it's always, is there a time when you start to say, let's plan as if we think that's going to happen, and when do you do that? And if you have to do some things first before you can plan as if that's going to happen, then maybe you delineate what it is we have to do so that we can plan as if that's going to be our goal and what we're going to attempt to have happen. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Some items will be dependent on completion of others. So.
Yeah.
And there are definitely some smaller projects that can be done in anticipation of the bigger projects to make the space more usable.
Yes, absolutely. Well, right, an example, because I just walked it around there, and there's a variety of things. There's still a cone where there's a missing, like one of those mini manholes or something. Mm-hmm. Things like that shouldn't wait. Those kind of fixing the curbing and the stuff in there, that should happen within the next month or something. Ideally, it looked really nice. It looked very neat down there. But some of those things, I think, can't wait 2 or 3 years while we do the other. On the other hand, like I say, when it comes to any historic signage or something, I don't see any real reason to get too, this is a good time to plan those, figure out what we want the signs to see, have all those meetings. But the time will be when you have, what's the basic hardscape gonna look like down there, isn't that kind of?
For this meeting, we want, I suggest or throw out that maybe we just prioritize the top 10 items or primary goals. To me, it seems like once we do our thing and say, these are the things we would like to see done, that you really have to take the whole plan into account and say, okay, Riverfront having, the signage, it's nice and we can do that. Fixing Moonlight Brook, yes, that's a priority, but, it requires that we go get this grant, that grant. You're the one that's gonna have to say how much it's gonna cost and what the timeframes are. I don't think we can address that.
I think so my suggestion, pick top 3 for each theme, and then bring us close to 10. And then I think the whole point of this is to, not have it be a static document too. So how I envision this is, this is the plan board. Plan board is in charge of the master plan. So this is, you're advising the plan board what should be a prioritization to achieve the chapter's goals, if they were to adopt it. And moving forward, while the plan board is the steward of the whole master plan, you as the Riverfront Advisory Committee are going to be basically the steward of this chapter for the most part. So the plan board is going to be relying on you, and they're probably going to want check-ins as well. So the idea being that there'll be more communication between the advisory committee and the plan board on what the priorities are, what have we done in to reach these goals, and then if there's any adjustments made, you can make recommendations, and the matrix can be amended. So if anything, that's what this is to keep engagement alive, and have it be a living document more so than a static one. So that's how I envision all this, and just keeps us, like I said, more engaged in moving forward and achieving our goals. So I think just for time's sake, maybe if you all agree, maybe pick 3 or 4 priorities for each theme, just a recommendation, then we can kind of move forward from there, have a collective discussion on that.
To sound with vibrancy, can I make a suggestion that under vibrancy, the 3 primary goals there, the one that's a priority to me is the maintenance and enhancement of the amenities downtown is,
Absolutely agree.
okay.
Yeah,
Then-
especially the one establishing, who's effectively doing that.
And then within the sub-goals there, do you want like 1 or 2?
I think we picked the sub-goals. So prioritize the so we're calling action items. We're going to change that sub-goal to actions.
Okay.
So I think with, so pick 4 actions that you want to prioritize to start off with.
So, one thing we talked about last meeting was potentially, like, literally going line by line on this thing. I mean, if that's still the intent, I think we're prepared to do that, and maybe as we come to them, people can say, like, I find this to be a priority. Maybe that's how we achieve both at the same time.
Sure.
Just throwing out an idea.
Yeah, we were having a discussion how the rest of the table should be filled out, but if everyone here is prepared to discuss the whole table, it might take a long time. That's
It
what.
might. I know.
Just looking at this. So let's pick this. What's most important out of these columns that you want to discuss?
Is there a difference, if you say most important, are we talking about what should be, I think one of the questions is, which of these things should we be working on now?
So that's the priority. That's
Yeah.
that's the column that we need to create here.
Okay,
And then out of all these variables, from time frame to funding sources, which ones do you want to discuss?
So to me, again, the primary goal of the maintenance, and then under that, of the sub-goals, or what did you call them? Activities?
Actions.
Active
Yeah.
tasks. I think we need to finalize the second one there, establish the Recreation Department and the Department of Public Works as the entities that maintain that. I think that's one of the, that are responsible for it. And then the fourth one there, advance the concept of Shanda Park, considering the following elements, what do we want to do at Shanda Park? So,
The only hesitation I have, Joe, I am not questioning at all that maintenance is important, but for this document, it seems like everybody's sort of in agreement that it's going to go over to public works, not conservation, and maintenance is going to be, there's going to be a maintenance plan.
but that has to be formalized.
Yeah,
to say-
I think it's just the execution of that. So like, I agree, I had started that one because like, I don't think there's necessarily disagreement amongst us, the existing steward, conservation, potentially even rec and public works, but still formalizing something at the town level that says everyone agrees this is who's now responsible.
I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
Sounds like people just want to discuss priority. Do you just want to do that right now?
It's probably not a bad thing. I'd like to see some discussion on the columns to the right, maybe on those priority items, because I think there should be some semblance of agreement about what people see in terms of short, medium, long action, overall costs.
Should we identify which ones are the priorities first, and then you go back and, okay, now of these priorities here,
That makes
the
sense.
time frame to fit within them?
I think that
Is
makes sense.
and who's responsible?
So I had starred the two that you mentioned, Joe, and vibrancy, establish the rec department, Department of Public Works, and then the final one in the blue coloring about advancing a concept plan for Shanda Park. I had also starred, I kind of lumped in the first three under just the general umbrella of signage, educational signage, historical, nature, all of that. I think that's more of a byproduct of what comes out of some of the other things, but talking about a semi-low cost item to just increase overall education awareness of history, nature, whatever we ultimately implement down there. So signage had been my third kind of.
So would you consider that then an action item of the maintenance slash Shanda?
Could the action item be something about, it seems to me like there's going to be, when it comes to signage, you've got Newmarket Historical Society, you've got people who are very interested in that topic and have expertise on that. So the idea where you might start to identify stakeholders or something like that, does that, figure out the process for how you're going to determine and decide on the signs, because the time to really get down to details on that will be at some later planning point when you have other things in place as well.
Agreed. I do think that's a slightly later one, and maybe we would be the lead entity, but yeah, Historical Society, Main Street Corp, like other entities that have a higher and more detailed stake in this, that have that information readily available, would probably be who we actually appeal to on the signed content.
So those would be the supporting entities.
Yeah.
So I hear two under, what was it? The Shanda Park, who maintains it, and what was it? Advance the concept plan for Shanda Park, and then the signage ones. You want collectively say that as a priority, all three?
Or would it be signage, wayfaring, combination of both?
I think that's separate. So like the signage wayfinding, like Riverwalk thing, is kind of at the start of the next section for connectivity. So I almost think it's separate, but I would also put that as a priority.
I mean, it's going to be in some ways covered in both areas.
Yeah.
You're going to have signage for everything having to do with the downtown and the riverfront and everything else. But in terms of the cohesive river walk and the signage around that, we can kind of have that discussion under connectivity maybe.
Yeah.
So signage ones and then the ones about park improvements and responsibilities for vibrancy?
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Ooh, the connectivity.
Under connectivity, I think, establish a cohesive Riverwalk, and then for the action items there, engage New Hampshire Fish and Game in for the property easements. Okay, because I think we definitely need that if we want to expand south. That has to be worked out, and then if we want to make improvements to the walkway to Heron Point, we may have to do stuff there. And I don't know about this. Initiate discussions with New Hampshire Fish and Game regarding improvements to the ice fish, the launch and improving launch improvements.
Well, it's not, I don't think the future of that area is not any kind of launch, because ice fishing is not feasible very many winters anymore. And I think the idea of having the way the plan is currently written, I liked all the discussions about, the land that goes down to that area, the possibility of public use, how tight Shanda Park is, and how it would be desirable to have a plan around those things. So, to me, I think the difficulty. I mean, it wouldn't be a bad idea to have, I see people, I go to hearings where Fish and Game is sometime, and at some point I might ask her but I think we heard at some point from them that they're not, it's not on their plans as a boat landing, and I don't think I think what would be easier to get into discussions with them beyond just a very general preliminary is when we get to the point where we would know what we want to do with that, if we want to do something with that.
Yeah,
Have more of a proposal about it.
correct. I think the second part of it may be more relevant, having that site be potentially something more than what it is right now. So I kind of, again, I just can't help myself cheating here, but I kind of starred both the Fish and Game ones as a priority of engaging them both on the boat launch area down behind Public Works facility as well as at Leo Fillion Park. And both sides of that just creating additional public space and access and things for the actual riverfront. So I think engaging Fish and Game is a priority.
Yeah, and I think unless it's different, there's the people that are different from when I was part of the conversations from the dam committee. But there was the sensitivity around that Leo Fillion for, my sense is that area is a very sensitive area for it. Needs to have a lot of security about that. But I think it's something to have a conversation, but it might be nice to have an idea about what we want to do there, other than just open it up as a wide open park that anybody can go to anytime they want to. If that's what we want to go for, we should be, they might just be ready that they might have reservations, where I think we'd have a lot more, they'd be quite open to, what do you want to do down there where the, the old boat landing is, and, what the process would look like, and how would we, because right now, I think it legally is something like that, because every year they put up, they post things on that as if it's a boat landing. Mm-hmm. And nobody can use it as a boat landing, but they put things up there like it was. So that would be part of, maybe I'm getting too much into items that are down the road a little bit when we start to get ready to go out and talk to the people, but that's kind of background to what that would entail.
That's maybe the subsequent meeting of it, but I think either way, engaging them is a priority. What are the town's options? What are limitations? What are things that need consideration?
Right.
So I may have jumped ahead, but to me, under established keys of Riverwalk, engaging Hampshire Fish and Game and property easement for the Fillion Park there. I think that's less of a priority than the other engagement ones that are seek creative solutions on the primary goal. Seek creative solutions and strengthen connectivity of the town-owned properties. There's the two items there. Look for opportunities to purchase land along Bay Road to, increase access to Heron Point. And then the other one, investigate options to connect Shanda Park with the Brighton Street compensation. To me, those are the two are higher priorities than Fillion Park up there.
I have to agree, because those are larger tracks that will establish more connectivity with the established Riverwalk that we already have, bringing more people to different town-owned properties, and encourage people to actually utilize that space and walk it, so.
Not opposed. Also starred both of those, so.
Just to be clear, are we okay with just two priorities under connectivity, and those are the two that are under Seek Creative Solutions for the up there and down there?
I'll say this, that to me, a cohesive Riverwalk, the most, it's been contentious, it's widely used. I happened to stop there before I came here. There are people walking their way back and forth along that. It's being used. It looks pretty nice today. It's a nice day out there on the riverfront, and that part is used. I think to make that look better, at some point, we're going to need to come to some kind of understanding, or we'll just have to accept that we can't make it look better. But I think at some point we want some kind of just, to recognize that there should be, I think some of it happens here, because you're here, Betsy, so we have conversations, and I know we've had them in the past. I think it's important that continue, because in the end, to make it really nice down there, there should be something that meets the needs of all parties. There should be a way to do what people are going to do anyways, which is walk up through there, and there should be a way so that it's kind of known and be in an enforceable way what the public ability to walk through there is, but not the things that the public shouldn't be doing there in terms of loitering.
So I think we're talking about two different pieces of property. You're talking about expanding the Riverwalk behind Rivermore Landing, and I get the impression Joe is referring to property that's to Shanda and near the pump station and going up towards Young Road.
Well, I thought what we were talking about, one of here is a cohesive Riverwalk. And what I'm saying is, when I think of a cohesive Riverwalk, that's what I think about. Now, that may not be what other people think about, but that's what I think about.
But of the priorities, of all the things listed here, which ones do we want to think are priorities? And to me, you want a cohesive Riverwalk, but I think in this particular section, the two priorities are establishing a valid connectivity to Heron Point, which means we might have to get some kind of easements or whatever, and then easements to go south, to the property down by the pumping station there, the water treatment plant.
I guess I don't understand, though. I think it would be nice to walk to Heron Point from the downtown. I have no problem with that, but it isn't that hard to do, and I probably wouldn't get to Heron Point from the downtown a lot of times anyways, nor do I think a lot of other people will. So I'm just saying, and I don't think, it may be that situation being what it is, nothing is going to happen very soon, but I think the document has to reflect that, and it does in multiple areas. It's not in this part, but when we look at resilience, we're looking at rising sea levels. There will be need for infrastructure along that whole area. So as long as we're setting out a future goal that says the Riverwalk is an important concept, people like that, people should be able to walk over to Heron Point, that's fine. But I think what they really want to do is walk along the riverfront side of the downtown. And as long as we just keep lines of communication open to see if there's a way that everybody can be satisfied with an outcome that made a better infrastructure along that way and accommodated climate change and recognize the right of the public to walk through there, which they've been doing for a long, long time, then I think that's an important goal. I'm not sure it's possible, but I certainly think it's an important goal.
I think to Dale's point, I think about when I have friends come to visit. In my age range, it's nice to be able to park somewhere, like right out here, and just walk down and walk along there and then come back along the downtown. Because friends my age may not have that capability to walk all the way over to Heron Point. And I'm thinking, when my daughter was little, I would have been, Mom, you're walking too fast. It's nice to have that accessibility for a short walk, to do it, to see the river without having to go, okay, I'm going to have to park here and walk all the way up to Heron Point and down, no matter whether we park at the parking lot that's down on Bay Road there and just get an easement to get up there, or even if you were to park where we have been before the gate was not working. I think the point is that there are lots of folks, and for multiple reasons, who are going to want just that short walk and that accessibility.
I apologize for
And pigs.
because I'm confused. So are you guys saying that it's less of a priority to you to work on the connectivity to Heron Point in South than it is to improve just the walkway, that existing walkway, make improvements there and get that finalized?
I think when I saw the connectivity to Heron Point, yes, I would put it, I mean, I think there should be a way to go in there, but I think you can walk in there now. As far as better access through the downtown to Heron Point, some of that is sort of in the same point with where we are in front of Rivermore and all of that. We're talking about coming to some kind of understanding or purchase of rights or negotiation with landowners. So if I'm saying which is a more important negotiation to settle, we may not have control of either one. When you have private landowners, they don't have to do anything they don't want to do. But if you ask me which one's more important, I would say along the downtown in front of Rivermore and along that section is perhaps most important of all three of the connectivity areas. And the second most important one would be down, and some of these are long-term plans, but figuring out exactly what could we do with the area around the pump station? What could that look like? We're going to have to do infrastructure there because that's supposed to be, that's a long-term important piece of infrastructure for the town, and eventually that's going to be flooding more regularly. It already has now, and the wall is breaking down. That's what we talked about along the shoreline. So those two areas are really important.
So realistically, I think these are the two. I mean, I know look for opportunities on Bay Road and the pump station one are separated, but it's basically look at expansion of the Riverwalk to other town-owned places. But then I had also started as a priority the legal investigation and the easement review. So much of this hinges on what is already there, and if it's not there, or there's not a clear understanding what needs to be negotiated or discussed amongst public-private partnership.
Right. I don't feel like there's anything more important than that basic area of it. And some of it, whatever can or can't be negotiated, we got to fix Shannon Park, Moonlight Brook. That goes on independently of anything else.
Yeah, absolutely.
So those are two pretty big priorities right there.
Okay, so for my little mind here, just to be clear, I think there are two priorities that we have here under the primary goal is seek creative solutions to strengthen the connectivity of all town-owned properties in the vicinity of the downtown riverfront. That's the primary goal. There's two sub-goals or action items. One is conduct a legal investigation and easements for formal agreements with the Rivermore Landing and Bryant Rock properties. That's one of the priorities. And the other priority was investigate options to connect Shander Park and Crichton Street Pump Station parcel via the right-of-way purchases of private land willing owners. Is that those two the ones that you think agree?
I would generally agree. I don't know if we necessarily have to separate Heron Point from that second one either, but I think looking at connectivity south is more important than an alternate path into Heron Point.
So are you okay with that, or with those two?
Can I ask one question that's totally off topic almost, but it's there? What is Pinder's Lane?
It's the Class 6 road off Colonial.
Colonial Drive?
So you have the town water, wastewater treatment plant. It's the to the southeast border lot line. There's a Class 6 road there come from Colonial to Young.
I Googled it and it said it was, it was the entrance road to the ponds.
It's not a. So, no, if you walk up the hill, you'll see it. It's just a wide path.
I've walked
Yeah.
all over there,
So
yeah.
you know.
But there's no signs that say Pinder Lane, so I,
No,
and it's not on Google Maps either, so I was stymied.
it's hidden.
Okay. Thank you.
Military property can't be on there.
I just want to make sure I get these right in the minutes here, that, so are you okay that we got those
It's your
two?
decision, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, everything on here is a priority to some degree. That's why it's on here. But expansion of public access to the south and a legal investigation of what exists within the extent of the existing frontage on the downtown, I believe, are the two priorities from connectivity. Moving forward to accessibility, affordability, the major one that pops out for me here are effectively the last two. I know that's something I've been on about, but developing a work plan that lays out a timeline, sequencing, and prioritization of the downtown riverfront improvements, and engage all departments, boards, commissions, committees, and regional partners in reviewing this plan. While somewhat nebulous, to me, that's kind of essential, is getting not buy-in only from an advisory committee, but getting some buy-in across town committees and town staff that implementation and pushing these are a priority. And with a lesser priority to the one under it, which is establish a fund dedicated to downtown riverfront improvements. Because I think that directly feeds into the one before that. So those are my priorities from this section. But open to discussion.
I think one of, I agree with probably the last one, but although it's very nebulous, very broad, but also to advance that first one there, under improved water access points, advance Great Bay Living Shoreline Project conceptual plan for the boat ramp, and improvements in installation of the dock on the side of the existing ramp. I think that would be a nice to have, improve the boat ramp access.
And I think we've had discussion that boat ramp actually would be better off with cement pads instead of the gravel that's put down. Is that correct?
That was one of the
recommendations
For the boat landing?
for the boat
boat
ramp.
ramp.
Boat ramp. Well,
So-
that's what I meant by,
Yeah.
yeah, the boat ramp, I think it says in there, there's standard like concrete
Yes,
side
Blanket.
pieces. So that is in the draft.
right, right.
Yeah, I think the gravel just ends up in the river every year.
Yeah, but I think that would be, again, go towards accessibility for everybody and also helping with water quality because you're not dumping all that gravel getting into the tidal flows.
Yeah, I think it's, to me, somebody uses that, you definitely need that. You kind of have to know how far trailers can, in other words, part of the problem with the gravel might get put down there sometime because it will silt in. But you really only, you don't want to get people trying to back out there unless it's half tide or higher. So when you imagine what that would look like if it were improved, you're talking about a recognition of, nobody should be backing further than a certain distance, because then it goes to flats after that. So, So I think the concrete won't go way out, is that's a long-winded way, sorry, of getting to the fact that that concrete's not gonna go all that far, because it's just gonna get buried in mud down there.
Well, you're
So
not gonna be dropping a boat if it's half or lower tide.
You are not,
You're not gonna be dropping a boat. The water's not gonna be deep enough.
that's exactly what
Right,
I'm saying.
right,
Yeah.
right.
So there's no sense trying to put the
Well,
infrastructure out.
if they were to make improvements to the boat launch there, you may be able to do something at a lower tide, right?
Not really.
You know, if there's a-
That's when you have a boat and you get to a point where behind your wheels, there's ground, you've got to wait, you've got to have more water. So there might be some variability in it, but basically, it's,
Well, to me, the existing boat ramp launch area there is subpar, okay? Something's gonna be done.
absolutely agree, Joe.
No.
Absolutely agree.
I think that's one of the, to me, that's one of the priorities for that area.
Does that fall under just advanced concept plan for Shanda Park? Though, like specifically this, like, I think we just put under, can't stop flipping, under vibrancy and the maintain and enhance amenities of town-owned properties and advancing the concept plan for Shanda Park to include the boat launch. So I kind of feel like we're already covered on that. It's
Yeah.
good to know that it is. I mean, it's not something that's personally on my radar because I don't use it, but it's good to hear from others that do, so.
Right, it's not very neat, it's not really nice, but it is fully functional now. To make it neat and nice, I would not want to try to put concrete down there, put the berms in there, do that kind of work until we figured out the width of the landing and all of the other parts that are going to take us a couple of years to get down there to where we are. And then you'll do that part, because nothing's stopping that landing from working, being very convenient right now. That's my, so how that works in the priority of it is, I think it puts emphasis back on the plan, which is in terms of I guess is that priority or,
Develop the work plan? You're
develop
saying-
the plan for what we want to, I mean, it's not clear to me that, we know we want to have a landing there. I don't think we've talked about all kinds of things in 4 years, but I think we're clear that there's going to be a landing there at the end of the process. It might be narrower, that's in the master plan. I agree with all that language. They might have better facilities for people to get in and out of kayaks at that location, using some of that width. That's in there. We don't have to talk about that now, but I think once, in the terms of the timing of how this works, finalizing those parts of the plan are going to happen, and we can wait on fixing the ramp in the meantime. Is that, am I getting hung up in the weeds, or is that?
I think a little. I mean, I think it's important to know, like, I mean, this is what we're talking about, what are priorities? And I think a priority is doing something to the infrastructure that's down there.
Yeah.
So, like, I think that's important. I think the actual physical, like, means of it is for future discussion.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like, but again, kind of going back to, I think we already established, advancing a concept plan for Shanda Park and potentially even having professional help to do that
Yeah.
down the line. I think
guess
that
what
is our
confuses me a
priority.
little bit, Sam, and maybe I shouldn't be, but I think when we talk about maintenance and a maintenance plan, that's something we expect to happen within the next few months, perhaps, that's going to go over it. Right, that's going to happen really quick. When we talk about doing something more substantial to the boat landing, that's not, in terms of, it's a priority to have a better boat landing at the end. It's not a priority to have a better boat landing, to me, in the meantime.
Got it. So just conversation of capital versus maintenance. Yeah, so more of a capital improvement than a maintenance issue, sure. Okay.
So what did we decide? Just the one or the two? The developer work plan that lays out the timeline, sequencing, prioritization, that
That's a big
encompasses
part.
everything. So
I feel like it's all encompassing of almost everything else that's in affordability and accessibility.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's just that one is a priority?
I think it is the silver bullet, because it's so broad, but it is the most important one that's right here.
Right. I agree.
And the bottom one too.
Yeah, and the bottom
Yeah,
one,
yeah.
I think, directly comes from that.
Yeah, the funding, yeah.
Hard
Better
to
emphasize
do much
that.
with a plan if
Yeah,
you're not
let's
going to
emphasize it.
pay for anything. Yeah. So tacking to resiliency, the two that stick out to me is implement shoreline stabilization of general site improvements at the Green Street pump station. That, I think that's an important one, because that's ties back into resiliency, ecological feature, improvement to public infrastructure, and if we're talking about potentially ability to better utilize that parcel as its, form and function changes into the future. I think improvement at the Creighton Street pump station site is a high one. So I rank that high, as well as at the bottom of advanced conceptual plans for removing pipes or widening, removing the culvert for Moonlight Brook.
I
Well,
think,
I think all of them related, there's 3 of them related to Moonlight Brook, I think. That one, the one underneath that stabilized the Moonlight Brook channel.
I think I'm less concerned about the channel and more
It's more
the
about
physical infrastructure. Yeah, what is the right approach for the town there?
And a lot of the other, like along the edges of the brook and stuff like that, turn that in. I think once I think if we have these sub-goals that are kind of out there, under the big goal of coming up with a comprehensive design and plan and how you're going to do that, you hope all those living shoreline things are incorporated in that.
Yeah.
But the infrastructure part of it it's not just, and I shouldn't even use the word just, it's not only the importance of Shanda Park, it's a big part of what makes the town run is concentrated there.
Yes.
And if you're gonna, you don't want to modernize one without modernizing the other, and so they move together.
Yeah, I think they are priorities because they're the framework on which all this gets hung.
another one to consider is first priority. Last action item, consider adopting RSA 79E:4-A and/or 36:53-A, incentivize and facilitate resiliency. Use flexibility, especially private landowners, to have a negotiation with the town on property taxes if they make huge infrastructure improvements. So I think that's maybe something that the town should consider adopting. We already do that with, we already have one 79E for community revitalization. So like the mill buildings, that was, utilized 79E to help facilitate that.
You gave a good description of that last time,
Yeah.
and I'm failing to find where I wrote it down. Can you just give it again? Because I had asked you what that was last time. That was really helpful.
So basically, it's an agreement between the town. I'm pretty sure I have to really double check the language under 4-A, but I'm pretty sure that the point is that there's property tax relief for resiliency projects. So the property owners who come to the town under an agreement, setting a time frame and the amount of relief over a certain amount of years to recoup the costs of those infrastructure and resiliency improvements. It's typically how 79E zones or districts are utilized, and we did that with the mill buildings. The condos at Lang's Wharf was under 79E, or the 86 Main where Crack Skulls, that was utilized 79E to redo the building there, or renovate the building there. Mill buildings, Bryant Rock. I don't think Bryant Rock was actually, no, because that was in 2000. But so that program's been used to improve the town.
So if you said, gee, that sounds like a good idea, what has to happen for that to happen?
The applicant, property owners would apply with the town. I don't know if you knew, is that process for the 4-A, is it similar to the other, do you know off the top of your head? No?
I would think it's similar. I think that what you can do with the 79E E4A, is a couple things. So you can do the property tax relief. You can also establish a coastal resilience incentive zone fund, or use it to create a TIF, tax increment finance district fund. So there's like a couple directions you can take with that statute, that the town could probably go both directions if you wanted to. And I would think that it's similar to the revitalization tax program in which the improvement has to be a certain amount and the tax relief is for a certain period of time based on the improvements and public benefit of the proposed project. So that would have to be all laid out by the town when you like adopt the statute.
Right, so we adopt the zone, the area to be, that fall under this purview. And then after it's adopted, then property owners can come and utilize it, or the town can establish said fund.
So potentially it's just a mechanism to give, let's call it current and proposed landowners additional flexibility or incentive to
Correct.
improve
That's correct.
facilities. Okay.
Yeah, I would say or the town too.
Yeah.
If you set up
Yeah,
a TIF,
or the
that's
town.
gonna benefit, that's gonna
I think I
benefit
said
the
town, but yeah, I think you said town.
Okay. It's more tools.
Can I say something? While Mr. Collins is here, I just want to add that one of the things we've talked about is that we're agreeing, create educational signage for the weir and install in visible locations at Chandler Park. That will encompass a discussion about what is the future of the weir. We're not out of the woods yet. I want to make it clear that this is still my perspective. There's still a consideration on what the weir should be in the future. Does anybody agree with me or not agree with me on that?
I mean, ultimately, it's, all we're working on now is a master plan, a chapter in a master plan.
Right, but
In terms of US,
I just want Mr. Collins to know that he's not out of the woods yet, okay?
well,
As far as the weir goes.
I think, this may not answer your question. The observation I made as I read through this stuff is, there were several things relative to the weir that were in there. And if there's going to continue to be the population of fish is changing, lots of things are changing. But if people want some kind of historic structure there as an acknowledgement that here's a weir, there's been a weir here for a long time, and you want to kind of celebrate it in the way that historical things are celebrated in that downtown, I think there should be some kind of, not here, not now, but some kind of discussion before you get to the final stage of that.
I absolutely agree, but I was just.
Well, I just want to finish.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that I think there should be some kind of understanding of what the weir is going to look like. I think it should, if you're going to have nice signage, nice park, everything else like that, I think, and if the weir is there as a historical thing, there ought to at least be groundwork, some kind of discussions back and forth. What is it going to look like? Is it going to be an asset to the viewpoint? How much could it deteriorate, be worse than it is now? There ought to be some kind of understanding on that, in my opinion. That's just me.
Yeah,
I don't disagree with what Bob said.
That piece of granite with a sign on it can be moved out so people can see it. It's behind the snow fence right now and a bunch of tall grass. There has been a small sign down there for years.
yeah, I think, just my opinion, we should just continue the conversation of the weir, celebrate it. How do we memorialize it, and how do we continue its existence if the town so chooses? And Jerry, wants to continue, and then I think it's just continue the conversation. There's nothing settled right now. The weir has a right, and it's being used. And does the town want that? And continue. And not saying that the town can say no, but what I'm just saying is, if we keep on engaging with each other, the weir will evolve over time. Maybe stay as is, it comes in and out. Maybe someday in the future it's memorialized somehow. But I just think just no decisions right now. just keep on engaging with each other and just having conversations and just moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't see any change in the foreseeable future, but it's, again, just want him to
Yeah.
realize that it's not cast in stone that you're safe.
Nothing is functionally changed or will change from this discussion. You know, if someday the infrastructure down there changes and there's another mechanism needed to get it in and out or relocate it or whatever it is, that's a discussion down the line based on what those improvements actually are.
Okay, so we got shoreline stabilization at Shandor Park. We like that one as a priority. Does the committee like the idea of this, the 79E priority? Yes, no?
I think it's very important.
Okay.
Yeah, I like the idea. I mean,
You think it's a priority or just?
I don't know if it's an overall priority, but is it something that can be implemented with just a minor change? Like, I think we should act upon it because there doesn't seem to be any adverse outcome.
Well,
from
that's
it.
what I was trying to get at, though. It seems to me that that is part of the ability, the fact that it exists enters into any discussions that might happen, and I think discussions would be good between, private landowner, people that are trying to come up with a plan for the riverfront. So you have something could be part of the equation, you should know about it, but we don't have to approve it, or at this point, this committee doesn't, in terms of priority, what would be the next action step if we said that's a priority?
Well, I think you just let the opportunity, you're creating opportunities here.
Right.
You're creating different mechanisms to create more resiliency for the riverfront.
Yeah.
Establishing such a district would improve the odds of it becoming more resilient.
Right.
As of right now, because, it would be an astronomical cost for a private landowner to, do any type of repairs down there. Say it's a wall or whatever, So creating these zones that, again, that meets the statute, provides opportunity for the town to become more resilient, but also private property owners as well.
I recognize we're not like Hampton tip of the spear on this stuff, but if, I've been participating with the coastal adaptation work group for a long time. So a lot of those towns are very much into trying to create frameworks for people to talk about how do we protect our infrastructure. This is not this is not for beautifying, or it's not for, it's really just how do we adapt to, and that's what resiliency is about as well. Do we have those conversations about the downtown sea whales? Is that usually with those conversations, if they happen now, do they happen at the town council? I don't think we've had a lot of that conversation here. And I'm not saying it belongs here, I'm just, who talks about that? Because that's what's coming.
It's true, but also you think about it as another funding mechanism too for the town to make these improvements. That's safe for these improvements. So I'm just thinking, eventually we're going to pay for everything. If we can save for it in multiple manners, at least explore the opportunity.
What's the actual process? Does something like that doesn't seem like it rises to warrant consideration? I mean, how does it does?
Yeah.
So
It does.
all right, I guess that's what I'm going for. So in terms of form and process, something like this committee could make a recommendation to town council to consider it. Town council could decide to act on it and put it to warrant, at which point the voters would decide.
Correct.
Okay.
Would we do that? What kind of an area would you be talking about? The whole area covered in the map down in front of the Creighton station, pump station, or what are we?
We could bring it upriver, if we want, above the dam. If we wanted to, it could be anything you want.
Okay.
Along the river, I think would be most prudent.
Yeah.
To have that properties along the river.
And when we say, that this would be a savings, it would cost the town revenue, though, or isn't that right?
Sure. Yeah, you're offering property tax relief, but you're not paying for the improvements per se. You are through property tax.
Right.
But again, it incentivizes it.
I think it's another way to look at it is if the idea, if your grand unified vision of the future is that the infrastructure would be improved, made more resilient, prevent, try to mitigate harm from future storms or whatever, do all the things that every community on where the sea level is rising should be doing anyways, and a lot of them are. You're trying to do those things at the same time we come up with a plan for what this is going to look like in the future. This is a process by which you spread the costs of improving the downtown infrastructure throughout the town more, and not just to the people that live there, but everybody sort of participates in how do we make sure our downtown, stays resilient, is going to last better into the future.
That's a good way of looking at it. Yep.
I don't think I consider this a priority, but what I would say more than that is, can we just add this as an action item that people kind of look into it and we talk about it at the next meeting? Because this doesn't seem like.
Yeah, it was just a suggestion.
Well,
So, yeah,
it also seems like something that we don't need to wait until the master plan's finalized. If there's agreement at this committee that this seems to make sense, we like it, we could just make a recommendation literally next month.
Yeah, and to me, where this belongs is when you have the negotiations, public and private, that are ongoing.
Yes.
This is a mechanism that people should be aware of when they
helpful
have
for that.
those conversations.
But knowing it goes to warrant and no one can act on it until the second Tuesday of
Right,
2026,
right.
with their time allows right now. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like that. Maybe everyone can kind of look at it a little bit more, educate themselves a little bit more between now and May. And why don't we just talk about it at the next meeting?
Sure.
Okay. Clear as mud?
So one
Yeah.
in resiliency, did I get that right? The improved shoreline stabilization.
Yeah, specifically that at Creighton Street, and then also the second one from the bottom. The advanced conceptual plans,
Okay.
effectively infrastructure improvement to the outfall of
Thank
Moonlight
you.
Brook.
And did we do the last one, stabilize Moonlight Brook Channel, or is that kind of?
I think it's a byproduct of the infrastructure, because once you pick what you're actually doing there, that becomes a question of engineering first and foremost. And then as part of that engineering process, you could look to alternate means of stabilization, other than just dumping a bunch of riprap on it and calling it a day.
Okay, great. So
Just one question along, since we're right there. Which one of those sub-goals, which one of those is actually talking about where, I get it that it says that we're going to monitor the water quality there, implement stormwater treatment best management practice. That's more the parking area, I think. Which of these is it to continue to regulate and enforce stormwater management that's going to actually get at, you've got to identify the contamination and then you're going to find a way to correct it. Is that the bullet that?
yes, so we're going to continue watershed initiatives in addition to what we can do in the riverfront area. So again, how do we buttress the riverfront area with better BMPs? Meanwhile, outside that, we're looking at upper watershed investigations and improvements to better improve water quality.
To understand the source of contamination.
Understand the source, and then understand the source, then find solutions to
Okay.
mitigate.
And when you're saying upriver, you mean up brook essentially in this
Yes,
case?
watersheds, up watershed, yep.
Yeah, from Moonlight Brook, okay.
So I want to keep going and finalize this conversation. I know
I have to.
Betsy has to step out, so I did want to just talk date for next month. Again, second Monday would be May 12th, which I know personally for me is not going to be a good day. I'd like to propose potentially the 19th if people are okay with that, but open to suggestion here.
It'll work for me.
19th is equally good for me.
So, just to wrap up the conversation, everyone's good with the chapter? We're good with the matrix now as for priority? Are we good to?
I want to come back to that. I just
Okay.
knew she had to leave,
Okay,
and I
yeah.
knew I was
Yeah.
altering the date potentially, so.
The 19th is good for me.
I just want to make sure, Betsy, we've got your comments and everything,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
those are incorporated. Are you fine?
Yeah.
At this point?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think everything else looks great.
Wonderful.
All right, good.
Yeah, thank
All
you.
right, Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Betsy.
Yeah.
So, Liz, what do you need from us? I mean, I think as far as content of the chapter, I think we're about there. I don't really have further comment. I think it's extremely well written, so.
So there's a couple things to wrap up related to the mapping. We've had some additional layers and information, so that's getting sorted out, but it won't change anything substantially. It's just gonna
Sure.
be a couple new images. There's a couple links that I need to add, so the charrette report's done. And so I'll add that link in. The process of developing the scope for those 4 engineering projects has started.
Okay.
So I think that we talked about, and they're supposed to be done by June, the end of June, I believe. So we might have a little bit of information to maybe add in an appendix to this chapter, or not. But there's a reference to that scoping in the current appendix.
So the scope of the RFP might be done by the end of May?
Yep. The
Understood.
scope of the scoping, yes.
Scope of the scoping, sure.
Scope of the scoping. So that's scheduled to be done by June. And so we'll incorporate that. Aside from that, I will defer to Bart on how we're going to finish filling out the implementation, because that conversation's sort of been ongoing with the SRPC and the Master Plan Committee.
Yeah, so I think maybe for this, would everyone be comfortable if I take your comments, look at them, and just fill out the table, and then we just check them? I'll send them out in like a week or 2. You give your comments, and then we just, all the remaining items that there's some debate over, we can finalize at the next meeting. That's
Yeah.
just filling out the rest of the table.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's just more, if there's just any red flags. And then at that point, we should be done at least with the implementation table.
Yeah.
Since now we have the priorities.
I'm sorry, are we gonna talk about, like, we've got the ones, the prioritized ones that we want to address?
Yep.
You're saying we want to talk about timelines and funding?
So we basically, yeah, I'll take what you have, and then we'll put our best guess on what that would look like.
You're gonna supply?
I'm gonna supply
Oh,
it,
okay, 'cause
yeah,
I-
no, not at all. I supply, you review and make edits.
Yeah. You take our input,
Correct.
incorporate. Very good. Sounds good to me.
All right, great. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Awesome. Anything else anyone wants to discuss today? With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So, and it's going to be posted to be May 19th is the meeting.
Yeah, I'll email Wendy before I leave, and have her put it up for the 19th.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.